So this is where the biogas from Walker, this is where it actually comes into Abitibi and where the steam is created. And this is the beginning of the process.
Basically, the operation is once the paper gets into the conveyor system and it goes into a massive drum pulpers. We will see the drum pulpers as we go forward. And the purpose of the drum pulper is to make sure we take all this paper and pulp it back up. And also we are adding chemicals to this mix of pulp so that I can take the ink out. Because as you can imagine, in the press rooms, when they write on this paper, they have lots of ink on this paper. Our job here is to take the ink out. The drum pulper is the first process to pulp it, make sure that the ink starts coming off the paper.
Abitibi paper. I mean, look at this is humanity. This is our consumption. This is what we do. Look at all this paper. So kind of cool that Abitibi is using biogas to aid in the energy usage here. This paper is, as Saeed has told us, you know, is broken down and basically reused. And out of the blue bins, they take 80% and it is reused. 20% is the plastic bottles and the regular contaminants that you might find in anybody's blue bin on the curb. But again, you know, look at this mountain. It's really quite something.
As you can see, this material that comes up here is all the material that we cannot make any paper from. So what happens with this material is that it gets rejected by our operation. That material goes in the truck, and the truck goes into the, actually up in New York State. Over there, they burn this stuff and actually make energy from this. And all the metals that comes up here also gets distracted from that stuff and then be sold back into operation. So this is what we call all non-fiber material that gets also recycled here. In here, not only we receive paper, but newspaper from people that read the paper and leave it outside their homes, and we collect them. We also get stuff that we call magazine grade. The stuff that in the offices or in the press rooms, they have extra when they make the magazines, or when they have extra in the offices when they shred the document. We always get that stuff too. And we also can recycle any materials from the office or from press rooms or from any kind of magazines in our operation. Basically, this is the heart of our operation, whereas all the control systems that runs the plant that we just basically walked through is being controlled from here. Everything is automated. The quality control is automated. Plus the visual cameras, as you can see, every heart of our operations are going to be also visually monitored as to make sure that there's any problems. We have 3 operators, up to 4 operators here at a time in the control room, and they monitor the whole 1,400 tons operations of the pulp mill right from these consoles. And they can change the valves, and all automated, and all operations is basically based on the DCS controls of this room here.
In the Abitibi paper machine room here, you've seen some of the large equipment and the rollers and all the activity. Basically what happens here is they take the slurry from your blue bin waste that they've put in that great big washing machine and chopped up. They've extracted and washed out and taken all the contaminants out. And when they have their recycled pulp from the newsprint and the paper, it then comes in here and it is formed. And it is formed by going along a conveyor with material which is pressed, and the water is extracted and sucked out of that material. And then it is put through the drying process where it is dried, and eventually newsprint is made right here from your blue bin box.
Mike Watt talks to us about anaerobic digestion, green energy, and how the Green Energy Act is going to stimulate investment in this sector and what the potential uses are. And for a municipality like Toronto, where anaerobic digestion can be used.
There's a role for aerobic systems and there's a role for anaerobic systems. In a city like Toronto, with the urban densification you have here, there's not a lot of space for producers to site and run aerobic facilities. It's very congested, difficult to find, land's expensive. I think in this situation, anaerobic digestion can be a solution for the city. In fact, they do run one, as you know, at the Dufferin digester right now, and it runs quite successfully. With the provincial government passing the Green Energy Act, that will help some of these anaerobic digestion projects because they'll be generating more revenue from the anaerobic digestion power than they would have in the past. So that will help offset some of the costs. The current city programme works from the point of view of they have an existing system, they made it work properly, they're producing a decent compost at the end of the day, and they're generating green energy. So there is a role for anaerobic digestion in large urban centres like this. It's done all over Europe, and I think the city is currently in an RFP process. We're one of the proponents of that process to build another one, and I think that's a good solution for Toronto because it doesn't have its own processing capability outside of those anaerobic digesters. So I think that overall system can be part of their process. I think you're still going to need aerobic composting, and I think leaf and yard waste, for example, which is still collected separately in the old part of Toronto, is a successful program that can be done inexpensively. It can actually be done in open windows. It doesn't even need an enclosed system. So there's a role for anaerobic digestion and there's a role for aerobic composting. I think the issue with carbon credits is simple. If you can use carbon credits to invest in your landfill gas system, so collect more gas than you would have if you weren't getting the credits, that's the reward for early action. And I think that's the whole concept of cap and trade. The people that can actually reduce overall emissions by putting extensive collection systems in at relatively low cost and being able to sell those credits to somebody else who can't afford to reduce those overall emissions, that's what makes the whole system work. Well, time will tell in terms of the Obama system, but we're hoping that he comes up with a decent cap and trade that actually reduces the overall emissions level throughout North America. And Canada, of course, will follow suit. If you have a large landfill like ours, we're taking in excess of 600,000 tonnes of waste a year there. You can make the economics work if you have a user within reasonable proximity. So we've invested big dollars there, I think in excess of $8 or $9 million just on the collection system, plus the pipelines that were built by Enbridge, which we have to pay back. It does work for large landfills. The problem comes with smaller landfills. It's not so economic to do these kind of systems, and I think that's where cap and trade helps, emissions credits. The project we have in Essex-Windsor, I don't think our engineer talked to you about it. We have a complete gas collection system in there on a much smaller landfill. The gas is collected and flared right now because we can't get into the grid, but that whole system was paid for by emissions credits. So this is the benefit of emissions credits. If they didn't have them, there would be no system there and that methane would be venting to the atmosphere. So I think it's a positive thing that we've been able to use emissions credits there to actually pay to put a system in. The municipality didn't have to pay a cent for that system. It's tough to ask a guy in the landfill business what's the future for landfill, but we have a site there. We've recently got expansion for another 20 or 25 years, depending on the waste quantities we receive. I believe personally, coming from a European background, there's always a role for landfill. You can't burn everything, you can't compost everything. There's always going to be a need for some portion to go to landfill. I guess the question is how many more landfills do we need? And right now there's a chronic shortage of disposal space, as you know, in Ontario.
Now people, I got to tell you, windmills, solar panels, I mean, look at the biogas. It's everywhere, In India, they're using biogas for their barbecues, their own table scraps, their food scraps. We've got to get smart, people. We've got to get smart. Anyway, I got to hand it to Walker Industries. It's quite a thing. Landfills, necessary evil. But hey, they're waste. They see a resource in the waste. Even in the waste that's been filled and capped and locked away, they came back and they're harvesting revenue, money, and doing some good things at the same time.
This program is brought to you in part by RBC.